This is a guest essay written by Stephen Schechter of Stephen's Substack.
Last week, Gay Pride Vancouver held its annual parade, only to cancel it halfway through because 20 to 30 so-called pro-Palestinian, masked protesters blocked the route of the parade at its midway point. The police said the protest was peaceful and no arrests were made, not even for causing a public disturbance. The organizers stated afterwards that the decision to cancel the parade was not taken lightly, but as, quote, the right to protest is a cornerstone of our democracy. Given that they, quote, stand in solidarity with the protesters, the organizers decided to cancel the rest of the parade and, quote, focused on ensuring that our parade participants and those who came to watch the parade dispersed safely. Wasn't that nice of them? Having not attended the parade myself, unlike Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, sporting a gay rainbow on a black t-shirt, I cannot vouch that among the parade participants this year, there was the usual float of queers against Israeli apartheid. But even if there was, it clearly was not enough for the more militant of the LGBTQ2TS+ community, who clearly felt obliged to make a more fervent statement supporting people who rape, mutilate, burn, and murder men, women, and children. That they did so in their usual cowardly fashion, masking their faces, puts them right alongside the keffiyeh sporting Palestinians they so adore and champion, as tightly bound to them as they can get, without jumping into bed with them. For that, of course, they would be thrown off Gaza rooftops, but this prospect never seems to penetrate their dim-wit brains, just as supporting vile murderers never strikes them as perhaps an abuse of free speech. Nor does it occur to the Vancouver Police Department that this quote-unquote peaceful protest on behalf of crazed rapists that put an end to a parade is perhaps a violation of public order and a crime akin to shouting fire in a crowded cinema. But nothing of that sort seems to cross the minds of the good denizens of Vancouver, who pride themselves on the spirit of community that celebrates dead Jews. For the crowd of spectators did, I presume, disperse peacefully, guaranteeing that the peace, order, and good government of the British North America Act of 1867, which founded Canada, is still respected by the highest authorities and their benighted citizens. This, of course, is exactly how societies collapse, and Canada is exemplary in that respect, leading the way in the Western world to the dissolution of social bonds and the collapse of what passes for liberal, tolerant, decent society. It is nothing short of mind-boggling how myopic and stupid the gay community is, that it can ally itself with protesters who champion sodomite Gaza over democratic Israel, who ally themselves with the denizens of a Middle Eastern society that harasses and kills homosexuals in the name of honor its culture promotes. Can anyone in his or her right mind imagine a gay pride parade in downtown Gaza City or Ramallah? Did the gay community of the Western world spend decades fighting bigotry simply to condone and support it in a society halfway around the world? Nothing, I repeat, nothing, can justify such heinous complicity with all that is retrograde and inimical to the pleasures and freedoms which homosexuals and all their fellow travelers indulge in the modern societies of the West, Canada included. How warped and mindless is their worldview that homosexuals of the Western world can, with such nonchalance and blithe ignorance, claim they, quote, stand in solidarity with the protesters. But of course they are not alone. Their government does likewise, refusing to supply arms to Israel, sanctioning Jewish sheep farmers and grandmothers in Judea and Samaria, and urging Israel to accept a ceasefire deal in order to end Palestinian suffering in Gaza, even though the same Palestinians invaded Israel, killed some 1,200 Israeli civilians, and kidnapped 250 others because, once again, the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem had to be saved from what Palestinians have falsely claimed for 100 years is endangered by the Jews. No, the Canadian government's view of Israel is as warped as that of Vancouver gay pride, which the Prime Minister was so happy to join and salute. And it is of a piece with all the other rot that pervades Canadian institutional life, such as the DE and I mantra, critical race theory, a dumbed-down educational program for high school students, hormone therapy for sexually confused youngsters who wish to change body genders, pronoun litany, censorship of dissent, both scientific and political, and incompetence in government of everything from public health to fiscal management. Little wonder that more and more Canadians feel like nothing works anymore. And what is happening in Canada is rife across the Western world. Indeed, it is fascinating to watch a society come apart at the seams, digging its own grave because it misunderstands completely what the society has accomplished and how it functions. It would take a book no one wants to publish, and few want to read to get a grasp of what has gone wrong. Left-wing and right-wing are useless categories, but lazy people prefer them because they do not have to think or learn about what is really going on. Instead, they form opinions, and then their opinions own them. Nothing owns people more today than the virtue in their own eyes of being quote-unquote progressive. Beware the weak, German playwright Bertolt Brecht wrote, and Nietzsche too before him. But who reads Brecht or Nietzsche today when we have TikTok influencers and fake media to purvey what makes for good speech at the bar or dinner table? Who needs scholars of international law when media stars like Amal Clooney can make it up and husband George can unmake presidents? The West has become a joke, a well-deserved one, and Israel would do well to keep its distance. When Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United States Congress recently, he took pains to stress that Israel's fight was also the West's war, by which he meant that, in defending itself as the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel was fighting for the same values and practices that made the West such an historic achievement. But Mr. Netanyahu does not know that the West is no longer interested in preserving and building on its accomplishments. It no longer reproduces its population, no longer teaches its young anything but slogans, no longer asks people to respect the law which the government itself subverts. At the University of Guelph Humber in Toronto, a university marketing professor was suspended from his teaching duties because he denounced Hamas on social media, and students protested his denouncement. The university authorities caved in to the protesters, just like the organizers of Vancouver Gay Pride to theirs. Free speech evidently has its limits. Palestinians are a protected species. Just ask Greta Thunberg, now 21 years old. No, the West is not interested in defending itself or preserving itself. Israel is alone, and a good thing it is, rather than chained to a dying animal. The only answer to the idiocy of Gay Pride Vancouver and all its shameful fellow travelers is total victory for Israel in Gaza, utter defeat of Lebanon and Hezbollah, and nuclear catastrophe for the Iranian mullahs. My only wish is that when Palestinian homosexuals are finally free to march and copulate with their beloveds, they tell the Vancouver gay community that betrayed them, their presence is not welcome. It is an interesting footnote to this sorry incident that the Vancouver gay community is so very unaware of how Muslim society functions. I have presumed that the masked protesters were most probably of the same ilk that peopled pro-Hamas student encampments in Western universities, young, stupid, virtuous champions of social justice. But it may be that these masked marvels were simply die-hard Muslims, immigrants to Canada of the vicious Arab stripe, screaming Islamophobia every time someone challenges the screeds coming out of Gaza or Tehran, in which case they would have every vested interest in shutting down the Vancouver Gay Pride Parade, Western homosexuals being in their eyes a disgraceful lot who merit being put in their place when not murdered. Since Muslim theology holds that such infidels can only be at best second-class citizens, or in Arabic, dhimmis, it is a totally fitting punishment that their celebration of a depraved sexuality be shut down. and doubly so if the masked protesters can get the gay pride organizers to do it in solidarity with their Muslim fellow citizens. Thus, the Vancouver gay community participates in their own humiliation without even realizing it. Writ large, this is nothing less than Western governments abandoning Israel to become dhimmis of their own, beholden to Muslim societies that would conquer and subdue them. As an additional interesting footnote to this interesting footnote, when Canadian outlet Global TV News made one of its morning reports last week, all the anchors could say was that the Gay Pride Parade had been closed down halfway through its route, but never explained why. I had to go online to find out what had happened, and it was not from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation or Canadian TV News that I learned the story. From the legacy media, you would never know that a favorite son of the so-called progressive community had committed any dereliction of duty. No pride left anywhere, it seems.